In this video, I'm going to go through 3 pediatric Shonishin techniques to get your practice off the ground or to start your pediatric practice right now. So you're not going to want to miss a second of today's video. My name is Maya Suzuki, and you have found your way to the best place to shape, form, develop, and perfect your current acupuncture practice with safe, gentle, and effective Japanese acupuncture and moxibustion fundamental techniques. So if you would like to see more videos about Japanese acupuncture, moxibustion, palpation, and more, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell to be notified of all the future videos that I put out every single week. So before we get into the meat of the video, I would really like to talk about why I chose to do this video on pediatric Shonishin acupuncture, or as I like to call it, acutherapy, acupuncture without the puncture. So I absolutely love pediatric Shonishin, and I have found throughout the tenure of my career that it is extremely versatile in a variety of situations. I've used Shonishin or teishin techniques to treat day-old babies, including my own, all the way out to partially gentled mustangs, of which you can find a video of right here. So I have learned Shonishin and teishin techniques not only over the course of my acupuncture training in Japan at Toyo ShinKyu Gakko, but also through 3 years of training through the Daishiru style acupuncture group, which is, for those of you who don't know, Tanioka Sensei's pediatric acupuncture group in Japan. I've also studied acupuncture, of course, with my group, Yashinomichi in Japan, for over 10 years, really from the end of my first year in acupuncture school. So actually over 10 years at this point. And Yashinomichi I found extremely effective at being able to treat children. I also, of course, have 4 children, of which have been the guinea pig over the course of my career. So do I still have a lot to learn about pediatric Shonishin? Of course I do. But I can tell you that what I've learned up until this point has been extremely effective, not only for me in my personal career and also in my personal life with my children, but also has been very effective for my students. It's easy, straightforward, and something, unfortunately, that you're not learning in your TCM acupuncture education, probably. So without further ado, let's get into the techniques. So if I said it before, I'll say it again. Develop spot-on palpation. Using palpation with a child, especially with a small baby or a newborn, should be the culmination of your palpation technical diagnostic skills. The skin of a newborn or of a small child is so fragile and thin, and the fascia tissue underneath that skin is also not as developed as an adult. It's just very soft and delicate, and therefore your palpation has to adjust to the patient. Now, because I know that some of you are still in school or haven't gone to acupuncture school yet, I know that you haven't learned as much as you possibly can about the skin and the fascia. So let's just do a little bit of review. So the stratum corneum is the outer layer of the skin, or the epidermis. It serves as the primary boundary between the body and the outside world. Now, the stratum corneum is just the outer layer of the epidermis. The epidermis is actually made up of 5 different layers. The stratum basale is the deepest layer of the epidermis. It's made up of cuboidal and columnar cells. The stratum spinosum is made up of cells connected by desmosomes, giving these cells a spiny appearance under a microscope. The stratum granulosum is made up of cells containing granules. Those are components that contribute to the formation of the outer skin layer. The stratum lucidum is a thin, lighter appearing layer usually only present on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. The stratum corneum is the outermost layer of the skin. This is made up of layers of very resilient and specialized skin cells and keratin. The stratum corneum is made up of several layers that is continually shedding off of the skin. It's also called the horny layer, as these cells are tougher than most, like an animal's horn. The stratum corneum exists to protect the inner layers of the skin. Most areas of the stratum corneum are about 20 layers thick. Of course, areas like your eyelids are going to be thinner than that. while other areas like on the palms of your hands and on the soles of your feet are going to be thicker. The skin is the biggest organ system of your body, and it literally exists to protect your body from outside influences that may cause the body harm. Now in acupuncture, these are things like a cold invasion, and in Western medicine we might think of things like bacteria, virus, infection. At its core though, the skin helps with two main things. The first is to keep your body temperature at a healthy level. The second is to prevent water loss or absorption. Now the stratum corneum, again the outer layer of the skin, is sometimes described as a brick wall. The corneocytes that make up the cell envelope are layers, like bricks mortared together by lipids. Now those create the outer water barrier for the skin and of course for the body. And if everything in the stratum corneum is working perfectly, it'll help to protect your body from bacteria, toxins, and dehydration. And at the same time, it's also protecting the layers of skin underneath it. Now the bricks that I mentioned before within the stratum corneum are actually made up of keratin. These are also called corneocytes. Keratin is a protein also found in your hair and in your nails. So now after going through all of these small details about the skin, let's talk about why it's important to know this when treating children in particular and when palpating children. So we all know that the skin of children, and especially of little babies, is thinner and more delicate than in adults. But let's go into why it's actually thinner and more delicate. So research indicates that infants actually have a thinner epidermis layer. Now epidermis is a name that encompasses all of the skin layers, but in particular newborns tend to have a thinner stratum corneum, so the outer layer of the skin. They also seem to have smaller corneocytes, at least until the second year of life. The water handling properties within the stratum corneum are also not fully developed even by the end of the first year of life. And the infant stratum corneum actually seems to hold more water and less amounts of natural moisturizing factors. So this is really important to us as acupuncturists, or as I like to call acutherapists for children, because when we palpate the skin of a child, and especially of a newborn, infant, up to a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old or even higher, we should expect to see a different skin quality than we would in anybody else. Now this is something that most of us understand, but not most of us are actually able to put into practice in our actual practice. Why this is so important is because the skin quality that you expect to find in a child will actually greatly affect the diagnosis that you give for that child. And understanding when the skin is too thin or not thin enough in a child in a specific area, again, is going to greatly affect your diagnosis. This becomes very true when we treat children, because most of the time children under the age of 2 or 3 are not able to really voice where they have pain in their body. For these small patients, we often rely on the observations of their parents. Far too often though, parents and caretakers are blinded about what's actually happening with the child out of sheer exhaustion or out of fear for what's happening with their kiddo. Your hands as a practitioner need to be really in tune with what's happening with that patient, and also understand what to expect from that patient when you palpate, so that you're able to find the exact areas of distress on that child. Picking up areas where the fascia tissue is too tense, where the skin, the stratum corneum, is actually too thick and actually trying to protect the body too much, or perhaps too thin, where it's holding too much moisture or not holding enough. All of these things your hands need to be able to pick up for that child without hearing what they're saying. Now, it's really difficult for me to teach you how to touch a child correctly, so we're going to go over some really basic weights that you should be using for your hand, and these are based on Daishiru style, Tanioka style techniques when it comes to kids. But before I get into that, I want to briefly talk about the fascia tissue. Now, I can't go too deeply into this in this video because that fascia tissue is a subject for one video in itself, but fascia is a band or sheet of connective tissue made up of primarily collagen. Now, it's located right beneath the epidermis, and it spans, connects, encompasses, stretches between every single muscle, organ, and piece of tissue of the entire body. It literally interconnects the whole body. So it's really super important to understand the fascia. Now, if you haven't already dived deep into this really amazing connective tissue, I highly suggest that you get a great book on fascia and start reading up, because it can be really influential to all of acupuncture, but of course to pediatrics and teishin tools, because we're only able to access the outer layers of the body with teishin tools, and of course put pressure on the fascia and a little bit onto the muscle tissue below. A side note here, I just want to add in that teishin tools are not gua sha tools. They should not be used like a gua sha tool. It is not a massage. A teishin tool is used just like an acupuncture needle to pinpoint a specific area for a specific reason, but it is not a gua sha tool. Now, the texture, moisture content, thickness, and tension are clues to how healthy a complete area of the body is. But of course, palpation is just one tool, one technical tool and technique that we can use to figure out exactly what's happening in a child's body and where they need help. An even bigger clue is ki or chi, and that brings us neatly up to tip number 2. Now, before I go into tip number 2, make sure to watch to the end of this video, and I put at the end all of the palpation weights that Tanioka's group recommends for children. It's a really helpful little chart, so make sure you watch to the end to find that out. Training your hands to feel for ki or chi as an acupuncturist or as an acutherapist is hands down the #1 needed technique in your toolbox to be able to properly address the client diagnostically. And with pediatrics, it's doubly important, so you really want to listen up for this one. Now, the hard part here is, of course, how do I help you train your hands to feel for ki or chi over the internet? Well, actually, it's really not that hard, because I bet that you've already felt and can feel ki already. You might not have realized it yet, but there may be some of you that have a really strong Tai Chi, yoga, running, or some type of sport practice that gets you into the zone. Now, when you get into the zone, more than likely, you're able to feel the world around you a little bit more. Sometimes your brain shuts off a little bit, and you're able just to feel everything that's going on. In essence, when you're doing that, you're feeling ki. Now, an even better practice to do this is, of course, Qigong, Tai Chi, any type of like Kung Fu or martial art, because all of them are centered around understanding and moving ki. So if you don't have a practice in one of those art forms, I highly suggest you pick it up. Of course, a simple meditation practice can help as well. The great thing about Qigong or Tai Chi is they're actually going to ask you to start feeling for ki through that practice, and it can be really, really helpful in developing your hands. However, if doing Tai Chi or Qigong or meditation is just not your thing, that's okay. Develop any type of practice that puts you into the zone, and I want you to really remember that and start getting into the zone when you're in your treatment. Getting yourself into the zone can be really beneficial for you, not only diagnostically, because now you're able to feel for ki and understand what's going on in the body, but it also helps to energize you throughout your day and just makes everything more fun. So I really suggest that you start being really connected for each patient, each point, every single time, and it's going to really help to improve your treatment without ever even having a hands-on practice meet with me or some other mentor. So continuing on with this, I think one of the biggest travesties of TCM education is that it teaches you Qigong, usually in school, but they don't take that Qigong and bring it into your acupuncture and moxibustion and palpation practice. And that's really a missing link there, for them to teach you to say, look, Qigong doesn't have to be just here, and it doesn't have to be medical Qigong. Part of doing acupuncture and moxibustion and palpation from at least a Japanese perspective is being able to feel the ki and manipulate the ki and utilize it and channel it while you're doing all three of those things. Now, when you palpate, it's really important to feel for ki and understand what an abnormality feels like and what healthy chi or ki feels like. So to kind of summarize the difference between healthy ki and ki that might not be so healthy is you want to generally look for 3 different factors of the ki, okay? One is if there's too much. Does it feel like a bubbling over volcano? Does it feel like it's emitting ki, right? Is how we usually talk about an excess point. Does it feel like a sinkhole? Does it feel like it's trying to pull you into the body, like it wants more? That's, of course, a point of deficiency where the ki needs to be gathered more in that area. Or is it this third quality, which is called jaki or shiechi? Now, jaki or shiechi isn't covered a lot in most TCM education, so just to quickly understand what that is, it feels, for how I describe it at least, it kind of feels like a dirty subway or like a bus on a really hot summer muggy day, and it just feels dirty and kind of heavy and gross. Sometimes it can feel really hot, and sometimes it can feel really cold. So there's different qualities to ki, and that's where we get this heat or cold, right, going on in the body in that balance. But shiechi or jaki is not a good thing for the body. It's mentioned multiple times in the classics, and I really do think it's important to start training your hands to not only feel for the excess and deficiency of the ki, but where this jaki is also located. It's easy to feel if the patient, for example, has anxiety. If you want to feel for an adult patient, if they complain of having anxiety, oftentimes they'll have like jaki up here in the upper taiyang area of the body. So you can definitely look in those areas for it. And again, it just feels kind of gross and almost sticky in a bad way. And it's ki that's not helpful for the body. One of the things that I really don't like about the translation of this word jaki into English is they often talk about evil ki, how somehow this ki has brought on a personality that it wants to hurt someone, but it really has nothing to do with that. Jaki is just ki that's not helping someone. It's not good nor bad. It has no malicious influence to it where it's like, I want to hurt that person. It's just not helping that person. So ki that might not help me might be amazing for another person. Saying that, it's really easy to understand jaki if you think of it in the terms of a virus or a bacteria, and the body then surrounding that bacteria or virus in order to kick it out. And then so you have the gathering and the excess of ki around it. Saying that though, I don't believe that jaki can just be bacteria or virus, but I do think it's a good visual to have in your brain. So combining the palpation, the texture, dexterity, quality, the elasticity of the skin, combining these qualities of the skin with understanding where and how the ki is moving in the body together will give you the exact point that that little human being needs to have treatment at. And the best part is it makes acupuncture points completely irrelevant. On a side rant, Japanese, for the most part, don't believe that children have fully developed meridians yet, and therefore acupuncture points usually in Japanese acupuncture, what I like to call acutherapy for shonishin or teishin treatment, don't really have a lot of relevance. So usually we're looking at areas of the skin rather than at specific points. So now hopefully between the palpation of the skin and the understanding of ki, now you understand where the body needs a little bit of help, a little bit of tonification, and where the body needs a little bit of dispersion. Now this brings us neatly up to our third technique that I would love for you to master, and that's how to actually address an area of excess and an area of deficiency. Have you ever come across an acupoint and you weren't sure what was going on there, but you knew that something was wrong? How did you address that point? What would you like to know in order to be able to address it more effectively? Let me know in the comments below. So now let's get into how to actually treat excess and deficiency. And really the overarching theme of this third tip is don't overtreat your patient. So when we do an excess treatment for a child, it's going to look a little bit like this.
So really quick, we're going to do a dispersive teishin technique. So notice that I'm holding my teishin a very specific way. The tip of my teishin is going to be about a little bit below the tip of the pad of my finger, and it's going to be pressed in a little bit, and then I'm actually holding it catty corner, pushing against this second metacarpal on my index finger with my thumb. So I'm just pushing it in so that way I can't even feel the tip of my finger. Now this is obviously something you're going to have to learn a little bit more in person. You can tell that I need to have a little bit of water in my diet, I think. So we're going to do first a dispersing technique. Let's do that with the stomach channel. So again, three rules classically for dispersion is quick, shallow, and many, right? So we're going to be quick, shallow, and many. Now this is very much so a Tanioka technique. It's more of a brushing technique. And it'll feel like it looks very quick, but this is kind of what I'm doing. What I'm doing with my left hand is this nice palpation here, trying to check the point after I'm done. So every single time I touch the patient, I'm consistently palpating after. Now sometimes with a little kiddo, this hand needs to be busy with toys or distracting the kiddo, so you can't do that all the time. But if I were to do maybe a direct point, I'm going to hold my teishin, turn my foot a bit more, hold my teishin, and then I can do a very specific contact needling technique where I'm just hooking the key and then pulling it out. And it's very quick in actuality, because when you go slow, you start to gather the key at that place, and it's just going to be too much gathering.
When we do a tonifying treatment for a child, it might look a little bit like this.
We'll go to this little bruise I have here. Tonifying technique, again, the three rules for tonifying is slow, deep, and few. Now it's really hard to do a deep needling technique with a teishin, obviously because you don't puncture the skin. But what you can do is energetically start to penetrate deeper into the tissues. And so I'm going to do this slow, deep, and few by holding it in one place and starting to channel key into the point. And then notice, of course, the same rules apply, that you either close the point when you're done, or you would leave the point open, obviously, if you disperse. So to do that again, I don't have to hold it quite as long, but I can definitely move around. Now, if I were to do this more of a brushing technique, I would do it a little slower, and I would make sure that I actually have a little bit more pad here that's closing the hole after, closing the meridian after I move over it.
Now I know you're kind of thinking, they didn't look too different, but let's just talk about these really slow. Now for an excess treatment, again, we're going to use our three basic rules of an excess point and how to treat them classically, and that is quick, shallow, and many. If you can follow this tip for any acupuncture point, for any person at any age, even for animals actually, you're going to be more effective at addressing the excess. Now the interesting thing here is that teishin or shonishin, so teishin are the actual tools, shonishin means acupuncture for children. So in essence, they're about the same thing. Using teishin tools to do shonishin, to treat children, you rarely, well actually you never insert the needle. So that becomes really interesting because for a tonifying treatment, the classical rule is deep, few, and slow. So how do we go deeply into a point when we're using a tool like a teishin that never breaks the surface? This is going to become a little bit more esoteric, where you're going to have to utilize your ki to channel deeply into the body rather than just focusing on the surface of the skin. So again, this is a quick, shallow, and many treatment using a teishin. And this is a slow, deep, and few treatment, a tonifying treatment using a teishin. Now, when we look at them closely and really break it down, it does look different, but mastering those techniques is definitely something that you'll have to go really slow and thoughtfully about. In the beginning, I always recommend slow perfection rather than a quick mess. So just keep that in mind. So let's take these two different techniques, right, and come back to our overarching theme of tip number 3, which is don't over-treat your patient. So children, especially newborns, sometimes only need a few seconds, like 30 seconds of treatment. Now this is delineated really well in the Daishiru Tanioka style graph of how much weight and how much time you would need for a specific point and overall treatment for the body. I'll put that up right here as I just talk about it. Now, it's really important that you utilize these tips as guidelines, okay? These tips are just specifically guidelines. And of course, guidelines are great for the textbook, but they're not really great for the patient. So you need to be able to adapt these eventually to the child in front of you. But in the beginning, I highly suggest that you follow, especially the timeline, because most of the time what people end up doing with children, and I found especially with animals, is they over-treat them because they get a bit overzealous about the areas and what they want to do. This becomes really, really important when you're actually retaining needles in the body, because when you retain needles in the body, you're allowing the ki to balance things out on its own. The problem is that the blood circulation of a child is so much faster than an adult. So if you think you're going to retain needles in a child, only do it for 30 seconds, a minute, 3 minutes, don't leave them there for 20 minutes like you would for an adult. And this might make it easier for you if you're not using a teishin, simply because little kids don't like to sit still that long. The great thing about using a teishin to perform shonishin, again, pediatric acupuncture, what I call acutherapy, is you don't have to ask your patient to sit still ever. They can be breastfeeding, they can be playing with toys, they can be, petting your dog if you have a dog like I do in my clinic, and they can be really active within the treatment without it being detrimental to the treatment. So I think teishin definitely has its place, and it's a lot more beneficial and I think more relaxing to the child. Of course, it's really easy for me to flash this beautiful graph in front of you and be like, memorize it, time yourself, do this thing. But really, when it comes down to actual treatment, you have a client in front of you, you're not going to be able to do that. So I think the best way to really make sure you are not over-treating an area of excess or an area of deficiency is to palpate the skin as you're doing your treatment, before and after you're doing the treatment, and make sure it's changed to the degree you want it to change and that it hasn't changed too much, meaning that an area of dry skin has become supple and moist, but it hasn't become soggy or damp. That means you have over-treated that area. Yeah, so just to summarize, of course, double check your work, really develop your hands to understand the layers of the skin and the fascia below it, and then go back and double check your work again, and then start to understand the ki and be able to channel the ki through your hands to look again for areas of excess, deficiency, and for jaki. Now there's obviously so much more to learn about pediatric shonishin, again, pediatric acutherapy treatment for children, or how to use teishins in general. And if you'd like to learn more, I highly suggest you check out my platform, ShinKyu University. It is a great in-depth platform that goes into all of things pediatrics, acupuncture, moxibustion, palpation, and so much more. It's a lifetime membership and mentorship program. Now, if you're interested, go ahead and click on the setup and interview link in the description box below. I would love to chat with you and see if the program is a good match for the goals that you have for your practice and the future of your practice. So the whole reason that I have created the ShinKyu University YouTube channel is to bring free and beneficial content to your practice to help you help more patients worldwide with your incredible skills. So if you are down with the mission of this channel, I highly suggest and would love if you hit the like, subscribe, and little bell to be notified of future videos that I put out about Japanese acupuncture, moxibustion, and palpation. I look forward to geeking out about these subjects with you in the future. Thank you so much for sticking with me all the way to the end. I really do appreciate you. Now, if you would like to learn more about palpation, I highly suggest that you check out this video right up here. It is a great video, or you can also check out this video over here about how I use teishin tools to treat partially gentled mustangs. I hope you guys have a great day, and until I see you next time, happy practicing.